Hello, welcome to Network. My name is Phumelele Zondi with your technology and social media news. It's SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. News Network at sabc.co.za on email. This week, Twitter poll is asking you about those devices you make sure are always charged when load shedding comes, because it is back with us. Results of that are coming up later in the program. Firstly, here's what we have for you today. We look at the auction of a spectrum that has already started. The Film and Publications Board has expanded its mandate to look at online platforms as well. And in our conversation, there's the preservation of Africa's heritage through digitization. The auction of spectrum has been postponed several times in South Africa. This is because of various reasons that include court cases. There's still a court proceeding that's going on right now, but it has already started this auction of spectrum. Here's Lebo Mokomela with the details.
27 billion rand have been spent by Telkom and Rain in the first round of bidding for the newly available spectrum. The process opened on the 8th. The Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA, says that availing spectrum for auction to the highest bidder is aimed at reducing the country's digital divide.
It's a license that will last a period of about 20 years. So we will then, as a result of this particular licensing, start to see, the improvement in the user experience, the speed from a broadband connectivity point of view. When using our devices, we will start to see improved voice call quality. We will start to see improved reach in the outflung areas in our country. So the spectrum release is a direct way of dealing with also bridging the digital divide.
The availability of this new spectrum means South Africans in areas that currently don't have good quality internet coverage will now have better improved services.
If you think of it as the airwaves, right, or the frequency timeline, right, where if one cellular network provider is using a particular portion in that timeline, right, or in that spectrum band, right, then another operator should not operate in there because it's going to interfere, right? And an interesting example is when you're at home and you're connecting to your Bluetooth speakers or you are connecting to your Wi-Fi, right, and you switch on your microwave, you'll realize that there'll be an interference of your Bluetooth connection or your Wi-Fi connection. And that is because the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth are using the same spectrum, right, as your microwave. So it's almost they are speaking in the same loudspeaker voice at the same time.
This happened after years of delays and a whirlwind of court battles involving some of the country's network operators. ICASA's bidding process includes 6 licensed telecommunications, namely Telkom, Vodacom, MTN, Cell C, Liquid Intelligent Technologies, and Rain.
From inception, we had a two-pronged approach, which is this spectrum auction, and from a transformation point of view, there was what we call the wireless open access network. So that one will come. We are still enhancing its business case, but now on the auction side, we have a lot of network service licenses, but our sector all over the world is not a South African issue, it's capital intense. Now we also need to come up with selection criteria that would enable that those who bid for the spectrum acquiring will render services, because we have seen in the broadcasting space, even in the telco space, where people have licenses but they do not, they just sit on spectrum and do not render or roll out services.
In addition to creating speedy broadband connectivity, this license auction process is also aimed at creating good competition in the telecommunications sector.
The way the process was approached, right, was to try and create more competition in the mobile and telecoms market, right? And the argument was that you need to create access for operators that are not the dominant ones currently, right, on the initial part of the spectrum, so that they can get access to the spectrum in that area which is predominantly occupied by the dominant operators, so that we can then increase the amount of companies, right, that have access to the same amount of spectrum in the what they call low band spectrum.
Telkom still has a litigation process against ICASA. The telecoms network provider says the regulator is unlawful in the way it is doing things with the spectrum auction.
The Film and Publications Board has always given age restrictions to movies that would play on TV and in the cinema. But now that mandate is being expanded to also involve online spaces. Here's Sandile Hlangani.
Social media has been a crucial part of marketing over the past 10 years. However, during the COVID-19 pandemic, this luxury became essential to the survival of our economy. As countries introduced stricter lockdown restrictions that prevented people from leaving their homes, social media became the main source of entertainment for many. Apps such as TikTok took off, which now dominates other platforms with roughly 1 billion active users. Businesses started to take advantage of these apps to advertise their products, bringing a rise to a new type of entrepreneurship, content creation.
If we were to look at the numbers from when the hard lockdown started, literally when people couldn't go outside, when the only option they had was to watch, sit at home and keep themselves busy. So from both ends, in terms of people watching, there was obviously a higher need for content, and then content creators as well on the other side. We had more people creating.
This includes social media influencers, bloggers, and video makers. This group is one of the fastest growing economies of today. They create their own product lines, promoting brands, resulting in a greater expansion in revenue streams and opportunities.
We live in such a digital era where a lot of brands are using content creators like myself who are real and authentic, and obviously trying to reach out to people and appeal to people. And obviously the type of content that I try to create is a lot of relatable stuff, like I said, being a mother, juggling work, my fitness, a social life, and of course, like I said, a relationship.
The content that I create is basically, it's broad, né? It's not like based on just like one spectrum of content. It's like a broad type of content. I do like school skits, like, when you're in school, I do like growing up black, because we all know how it is. And I also currently I'm doing like just like vlogs and type of things like the recent video I did is like, what are buffalo wings? Do buffalo even have wings? Those type of things. So it's like just like events and like vlogs type of things.
This rise of online content necessitated regulations.
We don't need to look far to see that there have been numerous cases where mental anguish has been caused because of online bullying, trolling, severe character assassination, harassment, and all of these leading to real-life implications such as even suicide in certain instances, which is not desirable for our country.
The only content that is not allowed relates to those aspects that we as South Africans find offensive or unconstitutional, such as the hate speech, incitement to war, child sexual abuse material, bestiality, etc. This puts the power in the hands of the consumer to make informed choices of what they want to view or read, and to likewise make these choices to protect their children from exposure to content that can cause developmental and psychological harm.
Those in the industry believe that new regulations are needed to preserve internet neutrality.
Some of the new amendments that have come into this amendment include inciting war, inciting violence, distribution of child pornography and nudity, things like that. So I think the same sort of protection that we see on television, that we see in film, is the same protection, because it doesn't help if we are protecting children and consumers on one side of the content they're consuming, but then when it comes to online, it's the same regulations don't apply anymore. It kind of defeats the purpose.
While we have seen the growth of content creation in the past 3 years, some say internet connection is still a challenge.
That we obviously need to look at it in perspective in terms of how many people actually have access to online and what having access to online means in the South African or even broader African context. So what I mean by that is that we know that Wi-Fi, for example, being connected to a reliable internet connection is one thing that you need. Secondly, if you don't have Wi-Fi, it means you need to have access to data, and we know that data is very expensive.
Some content creators believe that this will have a negative effect in the long term because new and innovative services will not be able to emerge.
I think we don't really know what the criteria is, and for me, if it's something that's understandable and makes sense, which I don't think it will, I'm perfectly okay with it, because like I said, there is always a sense of responsibility. I have 80,000 followers on Instagram, and I have responsibility for every single one of them as to what I post on social media. However, for me, it totally depends what this criteria is. If it's something sensible, I'm for it. If it's nonsense, then no.
Experts suggest that modern digital platforms should not wait for governments to impose regulations. Instead, they should act decisively and proactively.
In July 2021, there was unrest that took place here in Durban, which left hundreds of people dead. Now, Media Monitoring Africa says there needs to be a multi-stakeholder body that looks at social media, as it's been blamed as one of the culprits where conversations took place to organize the unrest that took place in Durban, Pietermaritzburg and Johannesburg. It's been repeatedly found that social media played a critical role in helping to organize the July unrest in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. We found that while perpetrators used social media, those defending communities, malls and other infrastructure did the same too.
Social media groups help, but they also help to bring chaos and a lot of false information. But what we have two groups. One group is the general community, and then we have another WhatsApp group that are for those that are the first responders from the community.
Look, social media is critical. However, fortunately in our community, there's a wonderful link. We've got the Pastors Fraternal, we've got the Neighborhood Watch, we've got ward committee members.
The Human Rights Commission's hearings has heard how some used social media to show support for the chaos that was going on. Some say retweeting is just as problematic as the originator of the post.
Retweeting together with a comment is a definite way of endorsing and sort of subscribing to the views that are being expressed by the person that you are tweeting.
Duduzane Zuma and his sister Duduzile Zuma Sambudla have been named.
We can safely claim that Duduzile Zuma actually is infringed on some of the rules of Twitter, especially the one that tells us that you cannot glorify violence.
Because of this, Media Monitoring Africa says in times of such chaos, a multi-stakeholder body must be set up to deal with social media issues.
One of the weak areas of the response to the unrest in July last year was around communication. We saw it took a long time for government to start to get to communicate, to respond to things. Then we saw miscommunication, we saw different ministers saying different things. What we know about dealing with disinformation and incitement is that if you flood the communications with good, accurate, reliable, credible communication, it makes it a lot harder for those who are seeking to scare people and for those who are seeking to mis and disinform, for their content to take hold.
They say the multi-stakeholder nature of this body will ensure that they don't overstep to the point that social media censorship seen in other parts of the world is created.
They're not there to determine whether or not people should be prosecuted. They can maybe highlight certain issues, they can highlight certain networks that people can keep an eye on, etc. But the role of this body isn't to say, you know, go after these people or not after these people. It is to respond in a crisis, and it only comes together when there is a crisis.
President Cyril Ramaphosa's experts panel into the unrest also named campaigning on social media as a huge culprit. It is SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. News Network at sabc.co.za on email. After the break, we chat about the preservation of Africa's heritage through digitization. When the Tuareg rebels took over the city of Timbuktu, there was some sort of heroic mission to save a lot of these manuscripts. They were put on boats and then taken out of the city of Timbuktu. Now Google has gone on a project of preserving them digitally, so they are always there, and that protects some of the heritage of Africa. To chat to us about the preservation and the saving of Africa's heritage through digitization is Chance Kuganawa, who is an archaeologist at Google. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us, Chance. Firstly, tell us about this project that you embarked on of preserving these manuscripts in Timbuktu.
The Dr. Haidara from Sabama, DCI, so he's considered the guardian of the manuscripts from Timbuktu and Timbuktu Renaissance, and really the Minister of Culture at the time. So we're going back in time here, 2015. They invited Google Arts and Culture. They invited us to go to Mali, to go to Bamako, to see some of the manuscripts, the digitization center, and then they also took us to, this was before my time, but my director was part of this mission to go. They also went to Timbuktu to meet some of the families that were the guardians of the manuscripts too. And the idea was, look, there's a wealth of knowledge of the written legacy of Africa that many people don't actually know about so much. And we want Google to partner with us to digitize and make them, one, digitally preserve them, but two, curate and translate and make them accessible for anyone.
Chance, why is it important to preserve these documents and I suppose other aspects of African heritage through digitization?
And actually in Dr. Haidara's own words, he says, what's found in the manuscripts was important for people to write way in the past, but it is just as relevant, and even if not more relevant, for us to know now that this exists. Because what has been told through history for a very long time is that much of African history was orally transmitted. It was spoken history. Of course, you have the Egyptian hieroglyphs, and then you have some hieroglyphs from the Kingdom of Kush and Sudan, present-day Sudan. But this represents something that is completely different. This is, North Africa at this time. Europe was in like the Middle Ages, and but this was like the Renaissance of the world of astronomy, science, understanding peace, understanding ethics, women's rights, animal rights, just a lot in poetry, etc. So it was its own Renaissance, and it's written in paper, and it represents not only an important segment in Africa's history to the world, but it is something that everyone in the world should really care about. And that's why, to us, being able to not only digitize it, but to translate it and curate it into English, Spanish, French, and Arabic, modern Arabic, because they're written in historic Arabic, is something extremely important to us.
And how will we access them, and what will we find when we get to that platform?
You can access the stories of the project through two entry points. One is g.co/Timbuktu manuscripts, one word. And that will take you straight to a page that we created with Dr. Haidara and his team that tells all about the manuscripts. You can explore them, you can listen to listen, you can see short films, long films, you can explore stories about them in their context, read passages. You can also go to g.co/Mali Magic.
Well, Chance Kugenawa, thank you very much for being a part of our network. Chance Kugenawa there is a digital archaeologist at Google. And with that, let's take a short break. It's SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Welcome back. Here's what else took place in the rest of the world in the tech space.
On a frosty January morning in a field south of Seattle, a 3-meter black disc takes to the air. It's the first flight of a full-scale Ziva Aero Zero, a flying craft that its inventors believe will soon change the personal transportation landscape.
It's an octocopter. It has 8 motors, 4 in the top plane, 4 in the bottom plane. Each one is optimized for its position. If you notice, the body itself is an airfoil. It's a blended wing body, and it generates lift as it's flying forward. Over here, we've got the similar motor configuration, and then the pilot gets in standing up, and his head goes up there. He's got a very nice view out the front.
Human-piloted tests are some way off, with strict FAA standards to be observed along the way. But Stephen Tibbetts has no doubt about the Zero's future. It's still in the USA. US President Joe Biden signed an executive order requiring the government to assess the risks and benefits of creating a central bank digital dollar, as well as other cryptocurrency issues.
The executive order that President Biden signed earlier today is incredibly significant because it's the first time we've had the President of the United States very publicly acknowledge that the US's continued leadership in the digital asset space is an important priority. And this is a message that is going to trickle down to all of the executive branch agencies, but also the independent agencies.
9 countries have launched central bank digital currencies, and 16 others, including China, have begun development of such digital assets, according to the Atlantic Council, leading some in Washington to worry that the dollar could lose some of its dominance to China. Apple added 5G connectivity to its low-cost iPhone SE and iPad Air and introduced a high-performance chip for its new Mac Studio, a desktop aimed at creative professionals. Apple slightly hiked the price on the iPhone SE to $429 from $399 for the previous model. The new phone starts shipping March 18th.
The new iPhone SE. From the very beginning, we designed iPhone SE to include some of our most advanced features and technologies while delivering the iPhone experience at an incredible price. This is important for our existing users who want a smaller iPhone and a great value. It's also been an incredibly popular model with new iPhone users. And we're continuing to add new users to iPhone at a faster pace.
The United States, Japan, and Western Europe have been the top markets for iPhone SE sales in recent years, according to researcher IDC.
With load shedding having returned in the last couple of days, this week our Twitter poll is asking you what you prioritize with the gadgets that you really make sure are charged. With load shedding having returned in the last couple of days, this week our Twitter poll is asking you what you prioritize with the gadgets that you really make sure are charged. 67% of those that responded to our poll say it's the cell phone that they ensure is fully charged. We have 11% of you who say it's your laptops, and at 20% are people who charge the power bank. And 3% of those that responded to our poll, and that's in the minority, charge other devices. We'd like to know what those other devices are. And that's it. That's all we have for you. Find us on SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It is News Network at sabc.co.za on email. From me, Siphumelele Zondi, and the rest of the team. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
News.